Welcome to Front Row Files. I'm your host, Jennifer Thompson. I had every intention of doing a different podcast today, but we're coming off of Mother's Day weekend. This Mother's Day was particularly important for our family because our 20-year-old son just graduated on Friday from a trade school here in Dallas, but it really got me very nostalgic about my career because really my son has been a part of my career since he was a year old. And I know there's a lot of women out there wondering if they can do it all. But I'd like to walk through 10 pieces of advice that I give anyone when they come to me asking, how did I be a mom and have such a successful career at Medtronic? And you know what? It's a great question. And oftentimes I look back to see what were the pearls of wisdom that I could bring someone. My number one recommendation when you're looking at a career, especially in a role where you are going to have to be on call on a regular basis. For me, when I started at Medtronic, my son was a year old. My first role at Medtronic, I did not have to be on call, but I was required to travel at least 12 weekends a year. It wasn't until year 4 that I actually started taking call. Those early years of me traveling, I would say my son was none the wiser. He was very young, and it was more about keeping my husband sane than it was worrying about my son. My rule number 1, or I would say tip number 1, is you have to make sure everyone is on board. When you have a career in the med tech space, this is a lifestyle choice. There should be no hiding the difficulties that are around it, especially when you're on call. You literally have no control over your day-to-day, and you have to make sure everyone is on board with that lifestyle. Having that conversation with your significant other is very, very vital to the success of you in this career. I know it's not an easy conversation, but it's better to get it all out there on the line before you go into the role. Tip number 2 is the fact that you have to have a strong support system. I often tell people that are asking about how to make sure that they can be successful, what is something that they really need to make sure is available, and that is the support system. Maybe your parents are in town and they can help you with the baby. Maybe your husband has a stay-at-home job and he'll be able to work remotely at home and take care of the child when they come back from school. Maybe you hire a nanny. Maybe you have a great daycare that has extra hours that you can keep your child there while you're out doing cases in the field. Whatever that support looks like, it is important to have it. The only way to be successful is if you have that support in place before you start the career. Tip number 3 is give yourself grace. This is all about keeping your sanity, making sure that you are giving forgiveness to yourself when you are not able to juggle both things at the same time. The true goal here is to give the best of you in both roles. And you can do it, but you have to give yourself grace on the days that it doesn't work. So that's tip number 3, give yourself grace. Tip number 4. So I tell my peers this, and I tell the people that I talk to on a regular basis that, we're not going to be able to make everything. You're going to miss some games. You're going to miss some, key moments in the child's life probably. But the most important thing is that when you are present, make sure you're really present, because those are the memories that your child is going to have. Those conversations that you have around the dinner table, the games you attend, whatever it looks like, it's important that you're present during those times. So tip number 5, keep the moments that matter a priority. So I'm going to tell you a story. My first role at Medtronic, I was in it for about 3.5 years, and there were 145 of us. We were very excited to be in our roles, but unfortunately there was a business decision made to eliminate our roles. So we had to make the hard decision, each individually, of where we wanted to go next. There'll be a whole nother podcast on this, but I decided to be a clinical specialist. Now remember, I've already been with Medtronic for 3.5 years. as a new clinical specialist, they were going to require me to go in for orientation, which, again, I've already been here 3.5 years. I know how to work my computer. I know my email. I know how to do expense reports. I know all that stuff. But I was willing to do it. I was just glad to be back. I was at a meeting with one of our leaders, and we had a discussion around, do you feel like sometimes you have to sacrifice your child or memories with your child to do this job? And I raised my hand. And the leader came up to me later in the day and said, I need to better understand what you meant by that. Who is making you make that decision or that choice, actually? And I said, okay, for instance, I have to go back to orientation, even though I've been here for all these years. And because of that, I am going to be missing my son's first day of kindergarten, which just, as you can imagine, rattled my soul. And when he heard me say that, he was like, that's not going to happen. That is absolutely not going to happen. I will call them tomorrow. Within a couple of days, I received a text message from this leader, and it said, take your son to school, take a photo of you dropping him off, send it my way, and then jump on the first plane to Minneapolis. Now, that literally is leadership. So as a leader, I try to remind people that we have certain moments in our lives that we just should not miss. Weddings, baptisms, funerals, whatever it is, there are certain moments in our life that are so special that we should not miss. So my tip is that recognize those moments, make them a priority, but also share those moments and what you need to be available for with your leadership and with your team. When your team understands how important that moment is for you to be at, they will do everything they can to bend over backwards and make sure that you're off for that. So in that tip, make sure that you recognize those moments and make them a priority. Unfortunately, you're not going to make every game. You're not going to make every recital. I missed plenty of Christmas Eve dinners because of being on call, but I made sure I was there for those life-changing moments. Tip number 6, and this is one that my son and I talk about on a regular basis. Tip number 6 is bring your children along in the journey. In fact, bring your children and your entire support group along in the journey. Make sure they understand why you are missing what you're missing. My son probably knew the mission statement at 8 years old better than I did. And in fact, we have some funny stories about me telling him what I did for a living and him telling other people what I did for a living. And in his 5-year-old translation, it did not go well. We used to do DFTs on a regular basis, which means that you put the patient into VF and then you shock them out of the VF while or with your device. Nowadays, they don't do that anymore, but back then they did. So one day I was trying to explain to my son what I did for a living. And I mean, the conversation was just going and going and going. And so finally I said, mommy's in the room and we put this device in the patient's heart and mommy controls the device until, the patient leaves the room. And one of the things we do is that we put the person into a pace that could kill them, but then we bring them out. And that's when I know mommy's done a good job. So fast forward about a month later, I get a call from his school and they said, hey, so Trenton is telling everyone that you kill people for a living. Do you mind explaining that to us? I just about died, but at least I knew that he heard me and understood that I had a very important role out there and that I was missing his events because of that role that I have. Now, I do not recommend you telling your children that you kill people for a living or getting into the details of what you do in your role, but I do recommend reminding them on a continuous basis that you are leaving them where you would prefer to be because you're going to save a life. You're going to make someone feel better. You have a mission with your company to go out there and save lives and make them better. And when you do that on a continuous basis, they understand that you're not leaving them because you don't want to be with them. You are literally leaving them because you have a mission. And that mission and that job is to go out and take care of patients. I think it's vitally important to let your children know that. Tip number 7, find a support group within your company. Find other people just like you who are going through the same challenges so that you can be each other's support, you can be each other's cheerleader, and you can be there to, share best practices. We are very fortunate at Medtronic to have a fantastic employer resource group network. Whatever you are, whatever group you think you belong in, there is an ERG for you. One of them is our Medtronic Women's Network. But part of the Medtronic Women's Network is a group called Aspire. And this is very specific to women in the field. With that group, we have found an opportunity to really engage one another where they are. We have a new moms group. We have a group for people that are looking to adopt. We have, stay at mom, when we were in the middle of COVID and we all had to start teaching our children at home, we had a whole support group around that, invited the wives and the spouses that were going to be responsible for that to the calls to make sure that everybody had the resources they had. But I have to tell you, in my 19 years of experience in this role and in this job, I could not do it without my support system. I have a group of ladies who we are all in different roles in different business units at Medtronic. But what we have in common is our love for one another and making sure that we all get through the challenges, no matter what that challenge is, in a way where everyone feels supported. So I highly recommend that no matter what company you're in, you find that support group. Tip number 8, and this is a tough one, especially for a lot of us out there who are type A personalities that really like to control everything around us and feel like we have to be perfect at all of it. Tip number 8 is allow yourself to fail. You are not going to be able to be successful at everything, every day, every step of the way in your career. There are going to be moments where you are going to have to fail on one side or the other, and you have to allow that to happen. You learn so much from it, and you understand what you could do better, but you have to give yourself grace to allow that to happen. I know that's really tough for a lot of us out there. It's tough for me. I don't like to fail, but I also understand that it's inevitable, that the only way I am going to be successful is pushing myself. And in pushing myself and taking chances, I'm going to fail. In fact, I've been laid off twice in this job, which is going to be a whole nother episode, but it's important to allow yourself to fail. So tip number 9, this is a good one. This is, I think, something that we should think about as a tip to live our life. The tip is very much around making sure that you have a passion for what you're doing. If you were going to give up time with your family, if you're going to give up time with your spouse, if you are going to go the extra effort to take 2 cars to the movies and 2 cars to dinner and 2 cars to the game because you may get called out for a case, you have to make sure you love what you're doing, because that's what motivates you to get up at 3 in the morning and go check on a patient. It's a lot to ask for in anyone. But it's also important to know that it's all very doable if you love what you're doing. So make sure that when you are looking for roles in any space, med tech, advertising, I don't care what the space is, make sure that you have a passion for what you're doing. And this is one of my number one questions that I ask people when they're interviewing with me is, what is your passion? So if you're going to make all these sacrifices for your family and for your child and for your support system, you better love what you're doing, because it's going to get really, really difficult. And if you don't love it, you're not going to make it. And my final tip, and I think it's something that we all could do better in our lives, is around making sure that your system, your support system, knows how much you appreciate what they're doing. I know when you get into the rush of everything and your adrenaline's running high and you finally get to take a break and sit back and maybe have a glass of wine, you often don't think about what it's doing to the other people in your life. So I would say it's very important in this tip to thank them for what they're doing and recognize the sacrifices they are making. I know as a leader, I try to make sure that the end of every quarter, I send a very special thank you out to the spouses and the support group of our successful teams. And I think we should all do that on a regular basis and recognize that the role that you're taking in your career is not easy for you, and it sure as heck is not easy for the people around you. So my son is pulling up from his first job since graduation on Friday. I'm going to call it here and end this episode, and I hope that these tips that I have given you will help you make the decisions around if this career is the right move for you and if it's something that you can do and balance with the personal side of your life and your aspirational careers. It's not easy. Find that support system. Make sure that you're talking to your peers and asking for help when you need help. But on this Mother's Day, I would like to say it can be done, and it literally can be done very well. Thank you for joining me. And remember, if you want to be seen, make sure you sit on the front row.